Text me if you need anything. I'll see y'all.
What if we need Brittany?
I can get you after 9 o'clock this morning.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome. It is March 24th, 2025, and we're live in the studio today. I am your host, Aya Fubaranelli, and this is the Rethinking Freedom Show, where it is not just a show, it's a movement, and it is about getting all of us to think about what we know, what we believe freedom to be, and more importantly, what we are going to do to ensure this freedom. So this morning, we are hoping that you all will come on the YouTube side. Even if you're listening to us on the radio station, just go to YouTube, Rethinking Freedom. We want to hear from you. We want to answer your questions. So be sure to type in any comments that you have and let us hear from you about these topics this morning. Today, we are going to be focusing on some of the changes happening in the country via the Trump administration. Is this the reintroduction of Jim and Jane Crow? The impact of Trump's policies on communities and everyday lives. And for those of you who are too young to know what Jim Crow is or what Jane Crow is, because it wasn't just white men, it was also white women, this was a period of time following Reconstruction. So we had the Emancipation Proclamation in 1865, and from about 1865 to 1877, African Americans in the United States of America were making a lot of moves and really staking their claim as citizens of this country, being able to vote. At least the Black men were able to vote, setting up schools, setting up jobs and businesses and building communities. And by 1877, the Ku Klux Klan was on an upswing. The federal government withdrew federal troops from the Confederate states that had been kind of keeping the peace, if you will, and holding back white nationalism, white supremacist ideologies. And things started to roll back. There were new laws put in place. Segregation was becoming more of the order of the day, if you will. And that lasted, as we know, in many respects, past Brown v. Board of Education, which ensured that there should not be any more segregation in schools, went past the Voting Rights Act, and so on and so forth. And there were many communities and schools here in Texas that were still under mandate to desegregate as late as the 1990s. Of course, we know that just by virtue of class and redlining, a lot of this country has still stayed segregated, but at least legally it was not supposed to be so. And so today, barely, 60 some days into Trump's second term as president of this country, we are seeing some rules and policies, we should say executive orders, because the courts haven't yet made a determination on whether they're going to go back to Plessy versus Ferguson, that basically stated that Black people had no rights that white people had to respect. So we would love to hear from you all. Put your comments, your thoughts in the chat, and I will definitely share that as we move forward here today. So we're going to talk a little bit about the recent rollbacks in diversity, equity, and inclusion, commonly known as DEI, in the rollbacks of these initiatives at both the federal level and now a lot of the states also kind of following suit. Universities being sued or being threatened with loss of funding, federal funding. So at Ohio State University, which is my alma mater, that's where I got my law degree. That's where I got all my college degrees from. I have 4 degrees from that university. they have rolled back on just about all their initiatives that acknowledged the history of racism and sexism in this country, and that we're actually trying to provide opportunities for everyone, including people of color and women and LGBTQIA community members, to be active and full participants in the society in which we all pay taxes, right? That was rolled back at Ohio State University. Columbia University has been threatened with a loss of something like $400 million in funding, which of course is significant. Here in the state of Texas, Abbott and Paxson and Dan Patrick flew to the White House last week to be there in person for the signing of the executive order that seeks to dismantle the Department of Education. And I think that there are a lot of opportunities for us in this day and age to really understand what democracy is about, what the rules of law are in this country, and to figure out who we want to be going forward. Because if we look at the history of this country for the greater majority of the history of this country, this has, whether you agree with me or not, and I would love to get your comments, this has been a racist country. This has been a country that has restricted people based on race. So as a Black woman, as a woman of African descent, when people say, oh, well, Black people are playing the race card, I'm like, are you insane? Or did you just skip school when they taught this? Or were you at a school where the true history of this country has been banned, just like we're banning books? And here in Texas also, we have the anti-CRT bill. And have you not learned about how this country was created, the land that was stolen, the genocide of the native people, the indigenous people of this land? The fact that Texas wanted to be its own republic, was its own republic for a while, primarily because they wanted to be able to enslave other human beings. And when I say they, let me be very specific. White men wanted to be able to enslave Black people, right? And of course, if you're a woman of any hue, any racial background, you know that even as late as the 1970s, women did not have the right to go in and get a loan. They could not hold property in certain ways. We did not have access to jobs and opportunities in the way that we have now. And of course, we see all of that gradually being rolled back from these threats to people's income, to organizations, institutions getting funding, and so on and so forth. So we definitely want to hear from you. So go on to the YouTube side, type in Rethinking Freedom if you're listening to us on the radio, and let us know what you're thinking, because we want to hear from you. So today we're also going to be talking with a guest, Stuart Whitlow. He was a candidate for office here in my district, House 31. He was not successful in that venture this time around, but thankfully he is still working hard, and he and some other people came together on Saturday to address some issues, and he's going to be joining us as well to share a little bit about that initiative. We also had another group here in Killeen, Texas, which is where I'm located, that came together and also started to address, speaking up more publicly about people's concerns with some of these rollbacks and the impact they're having. A few weeks ago, we had Rafael Garcia, who's a veteran, who unceremoniously was told that after great performance evaluations, he and thousands of other federal workers, including many veterans, were dismissed from their jobs. Just, you are unemployed. Thank you for your service, but no thanks. And some of them have recently gotten letters reinstating their jobs because entities went to the courts and fought for the rights of these people to have their jobs, to continue to serve in the roles that they were, because it was unconstitutional in the manner in which they had been dismissed from their jobs. So it's great to see the fight back. And it's interesting that this very divisive president, this president who claims he has a mandate, which is no mandate at all. He got less than 30%, 32% of the electoral vote, of the votes of all of the eligible voters. Kamala Harris got a little bit over 30%. But you know, the largest group, the largest voting bloc, if you will, were the 36% plus who did not vote. So if there are 100% who can vote and you get not even a third, that basically means over 2/3 did not vote for you. So how in God's name do you have a mandate? And now we are seeing people more vocally, more forcefully speaking out, and we're certainly seeing organizations like the ACLU going to court and going to bat, and we'll see whether the center will hold, whether our institutions are actually going to cave in, or whether we are going to choose to live up to the Declaration of Independence that all human beings are created equal. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. I also wanted to, here in my community, we talked about this last week. Some of you were a little concerned that it was too early, but let me tell you, as a gardener, the best time to address a weed is before it takes over your garden. You don't wait until it proliferates and then has flowers and then spreads out seeds to say, oh, I have a weed problem, let's address this. And I'm talking about weed as in garden weeds, not any other kind of weed, for those of you who are like, what? If you just tuned in. And so we had a stabbing death in our community. 2 very young girls, a 14-year-old was killed. I attended her funeral on Saturday. And we have another young girl, some say 13, some 14, either way, too young, who is sitting in jail right now. And of course, there's information coming on different sides about who was bullied, what was the situation. What is clear is that we do not want to be a society where 14-year-olds stab each other to death, where anyone might feel so threatened that they feel I have to protect myself in this way. And the question is, what are we going to do about that? So there have been a lot of discussions, meetings, community speaking up about the situation, what led to it, and I think more importantly, what will we do moving forward to ensure that it never happens again? And just like we have cancer research, even though with this current administration, even that kind of research they would like to completely do away with, which makes no sense. But like with cancer research, you know that you have to research the thing and understand what it is to find out what it will take to prevent it and to heal those who already have it. And so when I bring up the issue of the stabbing, of the violence, of the issues of safety in our school district, it's not to just to rile people up for no reason. It's really because we must have this conversation to figure out at the root level. Thank you, Karen. Karen says, got to dig it down to the root. At the root level, what is causing this? Why are our young people so angry? Why are we having a problem as a community effectively communicating? And we have to be honest, this is not just about our young people. Whenever I see a young person, quote unquote, acting out, I am clear that they are products of our community. They are products of the environment in which they've raised. And many of us adults are not modeling for these children what it would look like to live in a society where everyone is safe and where everyone has the ability to become the best version of themselves, to contribute in a way that is meaningful and beneficial to everyone. So we have communities that we've created now where it's very hard to access mental health to get the assistance that people may need, where people are unhoused, right? If you do not have a stable living environment, you can imagine the stress that creates, where people are hungry, where people do not have access to medical care, where people are working 1, 2, sometimes 2 jobs and a side hustle, and still not sure that they can pay their rent, that they can actually put food on the table and feel like they have a certain quality of life. These are issues that we must address, and we know that all of this stress impacts us as adults. It certainly impacts our children. We have a state in the state of Texas where we can ban books, but we can't come together and talk about what are we going to do to protect our children in terms of guns, in terms of weapons. We certainly have a lot to talk about. I want to share my condolences again with the families that were directly impacted by this tragedy. Serenity Baker's family, may she rest in peace. That church was packed on Saturday. And it was packed. Yes, there were adults there, but there were many, many young people there. And I was just feeling the energy. And it wasn't just the sadness over the loss of this young girl's life. And she had friends and well-wishers and family members and so on who were there. But it was just also this look of loss, if you will, in the faces and the bodies of the young people there. And my question is, what are we going to do as a community to wrap our arms around these young people, to make them feel strong again, and to make them feel like they are cared for, they are heard? And how do we create an environment where they can effectively learn, effectively become the best versions of themselves? And if we don't take care of this now, what's going to happen in the future? I was sharing a thought earlier and I didn't finish it. I was talking about people talking about who's playing the race card. And I'm like, so as an African woman, people might say, oh, you guys are playing the race card. And it's like, clearly you are ignorant about history, because who created this concept of race in the first place? And who created rules and laws going back to the 1700s to ensure that there were demarcations in terms of citizenship, in terms of who is even considered a human being based on race? Not me, not people who look like me. So let's be very clear where the race card came from and who's playing it. And right now, there is an orangutan. Yes, I said it. And if you have any issues with me saying that, come onto the YouTube side and share your thoughts. We have a man who is completely unfit to be the president of this country, who nonetheless over 30% of you voted for, and despite his sexual assault conviction, despite so much evidence of him not paying his bills, of all his bankruptcies, of the very disparaging way he talks about people with disabilities, talks about women, he talks about anyone who is not white, male, and rich. And this is not even about Christianity, because he doesn't believe in Christ, at least not the Jesus Christ that I was raised to believe in, because the Bible will tell us that we should love one another. The Bible will tell us that we should take care of each other. The Bible would not tell us to use power to be punitive, to punish people. Hopefully you all are paying attention to the news and paying attention to the attorney who worked for the federal government, who resigned pretty much on the first day of Trump's new presidency, this go around, 43 years old, who was now found dead in her home, and we're not quite sure how. We can talk about the twins, the young men in Georgia who were supposed to be catching a flight to go home and then end up dead on a mountaintop in a place where 90 miles from where they should have been, where their family says they did not hike, they did not go to, and somehow a volunteer firefighter had pictures of their dead bodies and actually posted and shared it. Just the inhumanity of it all. So there's a lot for us to talk about. In Killeen ISD, the administration has placed several school leaders on administrative leave as the investigation continues. My understanding is that the district offered and maybe paid out funds in order to cover the funeral of this young lady. Again, it was such a tragic scene to be in that space and to see so many young people. I'm talking hundreds of young people who came out to send Serenity Baker home. And whether we like it or not, we should all be thinking about the young girl who is also locked up in jail at 14. As a lawyer, yes, we have, the rule of law. And if she is indeed guilty and there's no plausible defense for what happened, yes, we know that she should, quote unquote, pay the price for her crime. However, I'm hoping that most of us have enough humanity to know that if a person's brain is not even fully developed until the scientists say age 25, age 26, that perhaps we do not want to lock this child up and throw away the key forever and feel like there could never be anything good that comes out of her. So we've got a lot of issues that we need to discuss and things that we need to be addressing as a community. Before I bring on my guest, just wanted to highlight some of the things that are going on in terms of the rollback of DEI initiatives. I have now seen letters that have been sent out to graduate students rescinding their admission to universities, canceling their scholarships. These are students, young people who are trying to be educated and to be productive citizens in our community. And because of all of the threats to science and research and that funding for it coming from the Trump administration, because of all the freezes in funding for scientific research, young people, some of our best and brightest, are being told, yeah, we know we told you we're admitted to the school. And yes, we know we told you that there's funding available for you to come and study and be part of a research team. But sorry, that has changed, maybe next year. And the question is, what will these long-term impacts be on us? How will this affect us as a people? When we look at Social Security, some of you may be old enough to be receiving Social Security. Some of you, because Social Security serves not just people who are old enough, but also some of our citizens who have disabilities or incapacitated in other ways. Some of you may have parents who are in this situation. Have you tried lately to get a hold of anyone in terms of Social Security? Those offices have been gutted. The same thing is happening with the IRS. Some of us are business owners, and in the past, you used to be able to just send in a form requesting an employee identification number, and you pretty much get a response within 24 hours with your EIN number. And now there are entities, people that I know of, who've been waiting weeks, and that's not happening. We are seeing people who are being detained and deported, who are legally here in the United States of America, people with green cards, people married to American citizens, people who are gainfully employed, who are serving our community, who are paying taxes, and without any due process, talking about the home of the brave and the land of the free. Without any due process, these people are just being deported, labeled in so many different ways. There was a whole group of people, hundreds, who were deported to Venezuela. And now, because there's a deal that this Trump administration has worked out with the Venezuelan the country, claiming that it's going to be people who are in a specific gang who are going to be deported, and we're finding out that that is not the case. People basically being picked up and being disappeared, so to speak. Is this the nation that you want moving forward? And let me tell you, and I've said this before and I'll keep saying it, the only thing that is required for evil to thrive is for good people to do nothing and to say nothing. But luckily, we have more people who are now finding the courage of their convictions and are speaking up. Here at Rethinking Freedom, our question for you, those of you who listen to us in the radio, those of you who download our podcast, those of you who watch on the YouTube channel, is what are you personally willing to do? Because if you are still, quote unquote, minding your business, going to your job, paying your bills, and burying your head in the sand and saying, it's not my issue yet, what happens when it becomes your issue and you didn't speak out for anybody else, and now no one else will speak out for you? So on the federal level, what we're seeing is that the Department of Defense has removed what they consider DEI content from military websites, from all the federal websites. Things like the contributions of the Tuskegee Airmen. Again, this is a great time to go and study history. Why did we have the Tuskegee Airmen? Because Black people, Black men, were closed out of regular opportunities in our military. Go back and read about Woodrow Wilson and all of his racist policies and practices, right? And so you finally had a troop of Black men who were segregated but served this country with such excellence, and they were highlighted on some of the websites. People like Jackie Robinson, who some of you may know best for baseball, but may not know that he was also part of the military, actually court-martialed not too far from where I am, at what was then known as Camp Hood, then became Fort Hood, is now Fort Cavazos. But if the felon in chief in the White House and his president, Elon Musk, have anything to do with it, they are going to change all the names back to the different forts and military installations to reflect the Confederacy like it had been, as opposed to, wait a second, if the Confederacy was anti-American, was anti the US, and were defeated, how then do you put their generals' names and basically traitors to the Constitution? How then do you honor them in this way? So women are being erased in terms of their contributions at Arlington Cemetery in the DC area. Information about Native Americans who served, women who served, African Americans, Hispanics who served, all of it is being erased. And then the question is, who is not being erased? And why is that? What is the ultimate goal? What do we want this nation to be? Do we want it to be run just by oligarchs? Or do we want this to truly be the land of the free, right? Karen says they're making it so easy and tempting to be like them, to hate and be consumed with anger because this is horrible. How do we fight back without succumbing to that? Great question. I'd love to hear your responses to that. Martin Luther King will tell us that only love overcomes hate. But how do you also love in a way that protects you, that fights back, that points out the hatred in other people? Interestingly enough, the policies of this administration may just be the thing, who knows, that pulls different segments of the American community together. Because now we're hearing farmers complain. A lot of white farmers who actually fought against the Biden administration when they tried to address some of the inequalities that had things that had negatively impacted Black farmers, to the extent that Black farmers have lost almost 90% of the land that they had at the turn of the 20th century. White farmers fought that. And today, with the tariffs that this President Musk and the felon in chief Trump are putting in place, there are now farmers who are speaking up and saying, we don't agree with this. There are now veterans who are saying, wait a second, these policies are crazy. There are women who are speaking up about their rights. There are other individuals concerned about these ICE raids. There are school and university officials who are saying this is unconstitutional. We must fight back. So maybe some of these policies will actually have the effect of bringing people from a lot of different groups that maybe we're not having conversations with each other to come together and say, we do have, and I'm saying this outright here, we do have a common enemy to democracy. And that common enemy would be Trump, his advisors, and all of the people who are caving, including the Congress currently led by Republicans, who seem to have again sat out of the civics class that said that we are supposed to have 3 separate and yet equal, in terms of power, branches of government, and they should be checks and balances so that no one branch is taking over all the other branches. So at this time, I have so much more that I could cover because it's coming at us in floods, right? But at this time, I would like to bring on our guest today, who's going to talk a little bit of floods, right? But at this time, I would like to bring on our guest today, who's going to talk a little bit of floods. Stuart, are you hearing an echo as well? At this time, I would like to bring on our guest today, who's going to talk. I'm not sure if the echo is coming on your end or mine. Echo as well. If you're on any other devices, I would say turn them off. Yeah, okay, much better. Um, I would like to bring on Stuart Whitlow, whom I had the great pleasure of meeting. Gosh, it seems like so long ago, but it was just last year as he was going throughout Central Texas, leaving his law practice to serve and to run for office against an incumbent who I hear is alive. Some people say they have seen him, but in the 15 years that I have lived in this community, he's made an appearance a couple of times, but he will not show up to any town halls. He will not engage with the people he's supposed to represent, although he's getting paid handsomely for it. And so, welcome, Stuart Whitlow. How are you this morning? Not sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me, Stuart? Is your microphone on?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can definitely hear you now. Thank you for joining us so early.
I'm having trouble hearing you, and I'm not sure why.
I'm not sure why either. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I'm not sure why that's. I can go ahead and talk about the event that happened this past Saturday, and we were in Bell County, Texas, at the Bell County Courthouse. We had a large group show up there, a very feisty group, a very energized group. They had asked me to speak because this was it was kind of coy. It was kind of billed as "Where are you, John Carter?" And they asked John Carter to come, the current congressman in for that District 31 that I ran against. He, of course, did not show up, and I was privileged to speak, as I'm privileged to be on your show today, and I feel like very honored to be here. I was basically talking about my message was that Musk and Trump were trying to cut they're trying to take $800 billion out of Medicaid and ruin our healthcare system. They are trying to, obviously, as you've already mentioned, they're trying to cut into our Social Security, which has been, in fact, they are destroying the Social Security system as best they can. They have, of course, USAID has been dismantled, and that will lead to the deaths of just countless people across Africa. There's no, it could be in the millions if they're allowed to continue to proceed with that. Although a judge has said that agency needs to be put back together, but we'll see if the Trump administration obeys that. So they're trying to cut all these things. The Department of Education cutting, and of course that funds people with disabilities and make sure that they get a fine education as everyone else gets. And so, and of course, why are they doing this? They openly say it. We want to give a $4 trillion tax cut to the most wealthy millionaires and billionaires in our country, which of course is a most dastardly and shameful way to proceed. And so I was talking about that, but what I wanted to do, and what I would like to say to the people out there today is that, we have had many movements in this country. We had to fight to get women the right to vote. We had to fight to have the labor movement win the many rights we have, such as the 40-hour week and things like that, work week. We have the civil rights movement that was very successful and continues to be. We've had the feminist movement. We've had the gay rights movement. We've had the environmental movement. And what I asked the people was, who won those battles? And they shouted out immediately, we did. And that is correct. We have won every single one of them. And I believe we're going to win this one. It's not going to be easy. It's a very difficult fight. We never want to think that it's in the bag, because it's far from that. And I believe I've talked about this, that maybe I'm even a little more optimistic than she is about our chances to win this. But I'm also very concerned and extremely worried that we're not going to prevail in this procedure. So it's very important that we get to work, knowing that we've always won, knowing that we cannot wait till the midterms. Some people are saying, well, we'll win in the midterms. Well, if we don't get to work right now and stay at it, we're not going to have a midterm in my estimate. I'm very concerned that we will not even have a midterm election. So we need to be moving right now, working very hard. There are the group that through this uh, event on Saturday is called Indivisible, the Indivisible Central Texas. There's also one Indivisible Austin, but you can contact them. Google those organizations, the Indivisible organization, also actionnetwork.org. If is another fine, or that is one other way you see the actions that Indivisible is taking. There are numerous groups. You can, if you're having trouble reaching anybody else, you can email me, Stuart Whitlow Law, Stuart Whitlow is WHITLOW Law. I'm a lawyer for what that's worth. Stuart Whitlow Law at yahoo.com, and I will certainly be happy to plug you in to whatever organization you would like to be in. We just had a rally in Austin at 12845 Research Boulevard, US 183, at the Tesla dealership there. We've had that the last 2 Saturday mornings, and those have been very successful. And many of you probably heard of Alex Jones, the of Sandy Hook infamy, and he came last week with a bullhorn riding in the back of a Tesla pickup, and was yelling at everyone, telling us we should all go home. And but that all that did was fire up the people, and it led us to have an even bigger crowd this past Saturday. So that's been a very successful movement as well. But I would just encourage everyone to do everything that they possibly can. I know you can always count on Aya to do that. She's been doing that before, and she will continue to do so. And anytime I mention Aya's name to someone, I don't say this to flatter her, but just because it's the truth. I mention her name to someone up in Bell County, and they say amazing. That's the word. That's the word that they say about her, and I totally believe that's true. So I'm sorry that I'm not able to hear what Aya is saying. Unfortunately, it's probably a mistake on my end of some kind. But that is there. I will also say this: at that meeting on Saturday, people were so courageous that, like Jennifer Lee was there. She was a state representative. She ran for state representative. Also, Dawn Richardson, good friend of mine. There was a fellow named Chris Gruber who's thinking about running as a Republican, but a very progressive Republican against John Carter. They all did a great job. But what was most amazing is that the people in the audience got up to speak, and there were probably 15 of them that just walked up to the microphone and gave their testimony, and they asked the absent John Carter questions. They had a kind of a cardboard thing of John Carter there that you could in his place for not being there. But and really, so many of them were parents of disabled children who know that this cutting of the State Department of the federal U.S. Department of Education is going to be so harmful to their children. And they were so brave as to get up there and speak on behalf of their children and what they needed, and that we must fight this effort to dismantle the Department of Education with everything we've got. And that was, to me, one of the most moving. And of course, Trump, as you mentioned, he does not like disabled people. He doesn't want to be seen around them. He makes fun of them. This is just a horrible situation. And Musk, one thing about Musk, though, I'll just say this before I close, and why I think these demonstrations at the Tesla dealerships are so important, is that he is feeling the pressure and the heat. I saw him interviewed not too long ago. He was really talking about what a devastating impact this was having on him, that he was being so scorned and despised, and that his stock was so was going down, so losing so much value. And of course he was out there on the White House lawn with President Trump trying to get his cars sold. I mean, that shows some desperation to me, without a doubt. And then also he had the Commerce Secretary talking about how, boy, I sure hope everybody will go ahead and buy some Tesla stock, because that really is so that's really, of course, that's outlandish, but it does show the desperation. So if we continue the efforts, we have a good chance to have a big impact there, and hopefully let him see that what he's doing is completely not good for the world, not good for our country, and not good for him. And it will get worse as it goes along. But thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here, and hopefully we can have a phone conversation here in the near future to talk about everything. I would certainly enjoy that. But thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Stuart. And I'm so sorry that with the technology, we weren't able to go back and forth because I have so many questions for you. But I do want to thank you for your service, for taking time out of your law practice where you could just say, hey, I'm fine. This doesn't bother me. And instead, you are out in the trenches, spending your weekends, your nights, your mornings. I see how active you are. And we are fortunate to have you in our community, and for highlighting some of these issues and giving people some resources where they can plug in. So thank you so much. It's not helpful for us to just be so thank you, Stuart, and looking forward to connecting with you offline as well.
I just see your question here about that you texted me about the responses of to the Republican town halls across America. And it's clear that there are many Republicans that are very upset with what is going on in Washington. They are making it very clear to their Republican congressmen that they are fed up, and when the Republican congressmen kind of try to respond with some kind of weak thing, like they believe in Doge, basically what it's doing, the people just laugh. These are Republican voters just laughing at their congressman like, we're not buying that. We don't believe it. We don't want to hear that bull. You need to step in and save this country and do what's necessary. Many people are afraid to really talk about Trump, or they maybe have a little allegiance to him still. Some of them, I'm sure many of them probably do, but they're not afraid to talk about Musk, and they have very little patience with him. So I'm very encouraged by those responses. I also am encouraged by at the Democratic when the Democratic congressmen are having town halls, they are the people are also letting them know that you're not being forceful enough. You're not standing up for us. And but of course, I'm also encouraged though by the fact that Bernie Sanders and AOC had 34,000 people show up in Denver. I've had some of my more moderate friends say, well, they just don't think AOC and Bernie should be kind of the leaders. And I say, well, we need everyone to be involved. I don't care. I want whether it's Liz Cheney or whether it's the former Republican, very conservative congresswoman, or whether it's Bernie and AOC, who I think are doing a wonderful job, and I'm very supportive of their efforts. And so anyway, those are just kind of my thoughts on the various protests and rallies that have been going on.
Thank you again, Stuart. Thank you. We really appreciate you. And of course, we'll invite you back. We'll figure out this technology because we do want people to get the information and to know how they can plug in and be part of the solution and not just sitting ducks. So thank you so much, Stuart. All right. So we can definitely, and we do need to talk about the issues and the problems. He brought up the Department of Education as well. Interestingly enough, the governor for the state of Texas is himself, someone who has a disability. And yet it's like the cruelty is the point of it all, right? This desire to consolidate power and to rule over everyone else. When you think again about, quote unquote, the history of the country, and fighting for independence from a dictator, from a king, and saying that we are about everybody, having equality, even though that is not what ultimately happened. But the question is this going to be the moment where we rise up and we really live out the ideals of this country? And if we choose not to, what are going to be the implications? Because what we see as they're called our cousins to the north, we see the Canadians fighting back. And they're like, nope, you don't just get to bully us. And you all know, if you've ever been bullied at school or ever watched a bully in action, you can't just acquiesce because it's never enough for them, right? And so you see Canada pushing back. You see Mexico pushing back. You see Europe, that was considered like our closest ally. The United States of America and European countries, we do everything together, except for Russia, of course, it used to be. You can see them now saying, oh, we understand that we cannot count on America anymore, that the ideals are not such that we are trying to advance freedom, although, we can get into whether it really was advancing freedom or really the issue is soft power versus hard power. Soft power where it's like, I give a little, even though I'm still taking a whole lot more than I should, versus now where it's just naked power out there. You don't matter. You're not human. Going back to the American Constitution that actually listed African Americans as 3/5 of a human being for purposes of power. And that electoral college still exists today and still is set up in a way that means that, yeah, it's really not one vote, one person, one vote. It's not the same because there's a weight that has been put on the scale, if you will, to ensure that the South, to ensure that even very small states that are pretty homogeneous in terms of race can erase, if you will, the power of states and areas that are more diverse racially, at least. So what are some of the solutions? And I would love to hear from you, our guests, our listeners, because we're all in this together. Where you are, what is going on? What are some of the solutions? On Saturday in my small community, there was a town hall meeting to talk about the issues with our school district that was taking place in Killeen. There was another town hall meeting that happened also in a different area of Killeen that was not focusing on the school issues per se, but was focusing on the larger city, state, federal issues and how these policies are negatively impacting communities. And then, as Stuart Whitlow just shared, there was yet another rally, town hall, if you will, that was held in Belton, asking a representative to show his face and actually talk to the people he's supposed to be representing. And as he alluded to, all across the country, there have been town halls happening, sometimes with Republicans, where their own constituents are saying enough is enough, and people are being forcefully taken out of these town halls because they're not going along. And then, of course, we've seen the town halls by Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and all of these things are designed to keep us informed and educated and engaged. Because here's the deal. If you've never read the book, 1984, I believe is the title of the book, you might want to go look at it again. You want to look at it for the first time, or if you've read it before, look at it again, because I recently started rereading that book. And when you can control all the outlets of information, when you can rename organizations and actually gaslight people in terms of what those organizations do. So you're looking at the Office of Civil Rights, and now that office is being charged with going after people or organizations that are actually trying to open the doors of opportunity. So it's like you're just flipping the original concept and the original idea of that office on its head. You actually want to change it into a tool to maintain white supremacy under the guise of we're getting rid of DEI because we're all the same. Nah, because last time I checked, even when you look at earning capability, the white males who graduated from Ohio State University Law School with me, and we all pay the same tuition, on average, I'm making more money than I am. Not because they're smarter, not because they're working harder, but simply because of the way the system is set up. And now you're saying that any organization, any entity that is trying to level the playing field is now the problem, as opposed to addressing the real issue. And we need to stop lying to ourselves. So these town halls give us an opportunity, whether the mainstream media feels like they can speak the truth or not, because people are afraid of being canceled, of losing their jobs like Joy Reid did, of being threatened with their livelihoods. And so people are just folding and doing what they're told to do. What happens then is that the quality of information we get, the ability to effectively analyze what's going on with us, becomes highly compromised. And so shows like mine, and who knows how long we'll be on the airwaves, and I don't care, because when you're part of a resistance, you use whatever tools that you can for however long you can in whatever ways that you can. And by the way, as I'm talking about resistance, I'm going to encourage all of you, especially those of you who use YouTube in any way, to check out another channel. It's called Adesoji Speaks Knowledge, and I'm going to put it in the description, because every Wednesday evening we have a segment on women and resistance. And we talk about the sacrifices it took for those women to have the impact that they had. An impact, by the way, that we're all still benefiting from. And so if you're going to be part of this resistance, it is going to require that you are open to the fact that everything is not going to be just hunky-dory, that there might be an issue with people trying to silence you, trying to threaten you at your jobs, disappearing you, so to speak. But again, evil only wins when good people feel like they have too much to lose and they're quiet, or when people are burying their heads in the sand. So there, I believe, 3 special elections that are occurring with Congress that could flip Congress, the House of Representatives, and provide a little bit of balance, because if those seats are flipped and the House of Representatives becomes majority Democrat, then that provides some counterbalance to the Senate that is still majority Republican, and then of course this White House, and then I would say a very compromised Supreme Court. Although it's going to be interesting to see how Chief Justice Roberts maybe chooses now to push back, even though to some degree he was very instrumental in opening this can of worms that we're dealing with now. When you talk about the ruling that made it easier for dark money to permeate our elections, which is what allowed Elon Musk to buy the presidency. Interesting when we want to deport immigrants and when we don't. And I guess once you buy the presidency, I suppose you are protected. Of course, you heard about the protests that are happening at Tesla. I don't know why anybody would be supporting Elon Musk. He's simply someone who is so diabolical. But it's not just him, because when we look at Project 2025, which we covered in great detail back in October, I want to say October 28th on this channel, you can go back and watch that episode to get a fuller understanding of the fact that everything that is happening now, they said they would do. And they're basically implementing it. The U.S. Department of Education. Women, you need to go back and read that. Veterans, I was trying to sound the alarm back then about the fact that you are not protected because you serve this country. How they want to roll back even your ability to qualify for any disability assistance, even though you have put body and soul and limb on the line. But women, you need to go and read Project 2025, because essentially what they want, the authors of Project 2025, who are now all through the federal government apparatus, is they want women to go back into the bedrooms and the kitchens. That's the only place you're supposed to be. And if we don't rise up and resist and not tire in our resistance, they may just get away with pushing things back. And for those of you who say, no, it can't happen, let me take you back. 1865 to 1877, we had Reconstruction, and Black families, Black communities were starting to build up and thrive. Here comes the wave. Andrew Jackson and Woodrow Wilson and a whole slew of presidents, and George Wallace and all these other governors who decided, nope, we do not believe in equality for all people. They kept putting rules into place, the legislators, all of that. And for almost a century, African Americans were fighting and resisting. You guys may remember the Red Summer, when Black soldiers came back from war and were being lynched and killed and harassed in the country that they had served. We know that when we talk about benefits for veterans, that for a very long time, African Americans were closed out of those. If it happened before, it can happen again if we do not fight. Another thing that you might want to consider if you're a student of history, and even if you're not, history is going to happen to you even if you choose not to pay attention. Every empire has fallen. Every old empire has fallen. What could we learn about how those empires started to rot from within, to weaken themselves, to understand that it was more so what was happening on the inside than what was happening on the outside that brought about their collapse? And is that what you want for this country? And some of us will say, hey, it needs to collapse. It needs to just completely fall apart, and maybe we can start over and really build a better world. But if you're one who says you're quote unquote a patriot, you love America, the America that we claim we love, well, some of us, because who's we? But the America that we want to sing the national anthem and only sing the first verse and not sing the third verse that still talks about enslaving people. The America that says one nation indivisible under God with justice for that one is crumbling. And if you're still supporting the orangutan, the felon in chief, and his president, Elon Musk, if you're still supporting people like Abbott and Ken Paxton, I mean, can you imagine this man being our attorney general? And if you guys paid attention to his impeachment trials, is he fit to be the chief legal officer for the state of Texas? I suppose so, since so many of you voted to keep them in place. But what are you going to do differently? Because if you don't speak up now, when will you speak up? So this is a call to action for our community. Who are you having conversations with? Who are you supporting? What entities are you donating money to? How are you bringing your services to bear? Today, spring break ends for my school district. Students are going back to school. How are we going to support the young people? How are we going to support the teachers who are under a lot of fire? Because listen, I'm a mother of 5. And sometimes just getting my children to keep their rooms clean and to do the basic things at home is quite a chore, right? So imagine when you're a teacher with 30-some students in your class, all of them coming from different backgrounds. You don't know what they dealt with before they walked in your doors. And you're trying to keep all of this together and also impart knowledge to these kids. Our teachers are stressed. Great teachers are leaving the teaching profession in droves. And that is, again, going to really negatively impact us. So this is your time to go find out who your elected officials are. This is your time to write to them. This is your time to call them. This is your time to speak up. I want to end by reading, if I can find it really quickly, I want to end by reading a poem that I hope resonates with you as it resonated with me. And I'm trying to pull it up right now in the last few minutes that we have, because I think this is something that we should all be thinking about, okay? This is a story about 4 people named everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. There was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. This is our time to use whatever little power, influence, and it is actually a lot of power and influence, whatever resources you have, whatever skill sets you have, it's time to put it to use. And I'm hoping that in April, we can have a lot more conversations about what that looks like, how we can all serve in different roles, how we can all support one another. You're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. Which one will it be? Here at Rethinking Freedom, We hope that all of us are going to choose to be part of the solution, because we absolutely have the power to create the communities in which we want to live. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, share, get the word out. We share a lot of things that are not as important. It's important for us to have these conversations. And thank you for those of you who joined us live. We look forward to engaging with you even more in the future. Have a fantastic, a powerful week in which you resist all the evil boldly, because we need you.